This here is a Juniper EX3200 T8 PoE. So it is a 24 port switch with 8 of those ports having PoE of up to 102 watts. Managed switch, has a little web interface, has a CLI you can get into with SSH. Reasonably nice switch for what it is. You can get them quite cheap on eBay, with the issues being relatively hard to find firmware. That's newish, and it is definitely EOL by now. So you aren't getting new features on it, and if there's potential security risks, they aren't getting fixed. So I want to use it. It's not a bad switch for what I like using in like my main work area. Problem is, I'm going to plug it in right now. It's pretty darn loud. It might get a little bit quieter. This is pretty standard operating noise. I want this quiet so I can be in a room with it and really not notice it, and it just blends in with the background noise. So let's take a look at how I can quiet this thing down. So first of all, where is the noise coming from and how is the cooling set up? So I've taken out all the main screws on the chassis, so the top just pops off. They also have a diagram in their manual that goes over how the cooling is laid out in here, but it's relatively simple. Those two fans in it. One is in the power supply here, and all the power supply does is suck air in from the side here, goes into the power supply, out the fan at the back, out the back of the case. Second fan is this big blower one here. This guy sucks air through in the sides, all of the sides here, and just kind of blows past all of these different chips that are here, and eventually goes to this fan and goes out the back. Now, silencing both of them are going to be a different task they're going to have to take separately. The first and easiest one is probably the power supply. This guy here is the included power supply. It's a 320 watt in this one because it's a low PoE power model. I've taken out all the screws already. Just going to say the normal caution because these can contain high voltages again. But this guy here has a little 40mm by 28mm fan. It's quite noisy. It moves actually a fairly reasonable amount of airflow. And what I want to do is replace it with this guy. This is a Noctua 40x20 FLX fan. This is designed to be quiet. And well, it's a little bit shorter, but that shouldn't be an issue here because on either side it's going to be basically covered by metal, so it can't just, suck all the air from the little 8mm gap that's going to be formed. The other issue is going to be this little power connector here. Yeah, that looks somewhat proprietary, so what I'm probably going to have to end up doing is actually Noctua has a little adapter, cutting this cord here, then soldering it, or actually they have little like crimpy ones, put it in here. Hopefully this area doesn't get too hot. I'll take a look at it with using a thermal camera to make sure nothing in here gets too toasty. I know this moves a lot less air than the included fan, but because I'm not using too much PoE and probably going to be using from my wall power measurements a maximum of roughly maybe 80 watts from the wall if I'm really pushing PoE, this cooling should be fine. So let's pull these screws out and hope that this fan actually fits and is somewhat compatible. So I've taken the screws out, and yeah, luckily this guy just pops off. There's a little piece of metal here. I'm not sure exactly why. And it looks like it's a little Sunon 12 volts, 0.4 amps, so same voltage as the fan I want to replace it with. Same 40mm by 40mm, it's different thickness. Went over why that should be fine right here. Quick test fit. Yeah, the wire looks like it has just enough space in here. Noctua is actually pretty nice on this site, and what they include with it is you get this little adapter, which is from just stripped wires, or not stripped actually, to a 4-pin connector, and these little kind of easy push-on connectors. So here we go. I get to just plug my new fan in, which means I don't have to actually cut off the connector, which is nice, so I can reuse it. And I'm just going to cut the existing one off right here. And that'll allow me to reuse this connector where it gets power from. And also, because of this, it lets me reuse, if I want, I could probably stuff these in there. They're low noise adapters, which are basically just resistors, so that I can use those if I need to. But I did a little bit of testing with this fan, and I think it's almost fully silent. We'll find out, though. And now all I have to do is strip both ends of these, and shove it into the little crimpy things. I've actually never used these sorts of things. I always just solder it or wire nuts. So, looking at how these are designed, I almost think I don't even need to cut the insulation off, but I did just in case. I'm guessing I did it right, but won't be able to check for a little bit. And now all I have to do is screw the fan in, make sure the cables run right, and it should just work. I will give Noctua huge credit for how easy it seems like they've made this. Well, I ran into my first issue with these. So the self-tapping screws they have, they're too small. So the screw holes on the original fan and this guy are different sizes. So we got a couple plans, which is either probably the easiest way is just to use their included fans, as they will work. And well, these little rubber thingies, this is the way they're supposed to go in, don't look like there'll be an option either, unfortunately. So it looks like I'm either going to have to drill these holes slightly bigger. Quality drilling work has been done, so it's a 3/16 hole now. So one of the normal fan screws, like this guy, just easily slips in. Hopefully the spacing is fully correct for that fan, but we'll find out. And we got that working. So tuck it all in here. Looks like that's plugged in. This guy's held in there. Time to put this power supply in and test if it works. And well, it didn't work because it looks like I screwed up with this connector and it didn't push it in far enough. So one of these ground connectors never actually made contact. So I ended up realizing that I suck at using these connectors and just soldered it for the negative lead because I'm not good at that. So we're going to just push this guy in now, and now we're going to do the real test, now that it should actually be working this time. And now the tiny little Noctua fan's spinning, moving a usable amount of airflow, I'd say, and almost silent. You can't probably hear it running right now. The big problem now I have is this fan. This is where all the noise is coming from now. This is the next source of noise I have here. So this is a large blower fan that kind of just sucks all the air out. It's a pretty proprietary size. I can't find any really alternatives to it, and you can buy this fan online. The problem is, well, these are the only models you can get. They're loud. So now I have to think of a way to get the similar cooling aspects that this fan offers without the noise. So that's going to be a bit of a pain. I did a reasonable amount of thinking about how to get this back fan ran correctly, and was kind of debating between should I just, replace the fan and put a different model in, which I decided to do, or should I try to make the main one spin slower. And I think my best opportunity kind of came to the just put this fan in here. It seems to run a bit quieter and move a usable amount of air. And the temps, as I'm going to look at in a little bit, seem fine with it, running after an extended period of time at the type of loads I'm going to be using. And then for fan speed control, I'm going to be using, well, this is a very old, it's just a little knob here, and then just an old ATX power supply to power it. That should give me control over speed, and on low speed it is basically silent, and on high speed it actually moves a pretty reasonable amount of air, so I can easily adjust to whatever I see fit. I did a little bit of thinking about exactly what the best way to mount it would be, and it turns out putting fan screws in a little bit with some tape actually holds them in pretty well at about the exact height I need. So I've been running it a little bit in its current configuration, and it's still a little bit too loud for me. The one fan that's making all the noise is this power supply fan. If I unplug the main fan I've been using, you basically can't hear the difference. In order to control the main fan, I'm using this little speed controller here, so I can crank it up. You can probably hear it, but it probably doesn't need the extra airflow, and the temps seem to be fine. But actually right now, let's take a look at the temps with the fan running at basically the lowest speed. Taking a look at temps now with the fans running at basically the lowest speed. Well, in software it says that the temps are fine, which is a good start. The other thing is just seeing sanity-wise if anything looks too off, because they normally only have temp sensors on a few of the big chips, probably like this guy, this guy. Touching the heat sinks, they're all definitely hot, but I wouldn't say any of them are burning hot, and normally chips can take a lot more than like your hand would feel comfortable with. So doing a quick thermal camera check, yeah, this guy's in like the 60s. That chip's pretty toasty right there. Not sure what that guy's doing. And then if I'm looking over at the inlet stuff, that's all fairly warm, but nothing's like I'd be concerned about it breaking hot. So that looks fine to me temperature-wise, which is great. This power supply is definitely warm on the inside, but it doesn't seem to be the temperatures are alarming in any way. They're definitely in like the 50 Celsius range, but nothing that would make me think this is gonna die because of temperatures anytime soon. So I don't feel too bad with spinning the fan a little bit slower with the Noctua low noise adapter. I don't know actually how low noise the low noise adapters are, so we have a low noise and we have an ultra low noise adapter here. So let's just try the low noise and hopefully it's enough. To my knowledge, these are just resistors in a nice pretty sleeving. So yeah, wow, this guy really has to get bent, but we can just stuff him in here. My biggest, my noise level kind of dreams, I'd say, is to make it quiet enough that I don't notice it just in the room. And right now with it open, it's moving some air, which is what I want, and I can't hear it. And turning on this fan seems to be the louder one, so there isn't really a reason to go any quieter for that fan, at least right now. And it kind of blends in with the rest of the noise in my room. Well, that looks like it's about as quiet as I can reasonably get it. Temperatures look like they're fine. I'll definitely keep an eye on like power supply and internal temps for a little bit. Yeah, that was, I'd say, a pretty successful mod. I've done this a reasonable amount of times on this sort of equipment, and generally they're quite loud stock, but realistically they don't need all that cooling, and their fans and stuff is just not optimized for silence. It's optimized for performance and often longevity. This is probably not the most optimal solution. If I really wanted to, I could put like a little buck converter or a resistor in and pull off the internal 12-volt rail, but where I'm putting it, I don't really care, so this will work fine. Thanks for watching another one of these little silencing network equipment server stuff. Subscribe. I'm probably going to end up doing this again sometime in the future.